Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson, the rematch. One of the best light heavyweight title fights in history in the first meeting. Not so much in the second meeting. It was, in my opinion, it was more of a well-planned, a well-thought-out adjustment on Jon Jones's part, not so much in Gustafsson's part. I want to talk about what happened stylistically in this fight, and that was Jon Jones making the proper adjustments to fight the tall, rangy Gustafsson. The first fight, the thing that stood out in my mind was the boxing of Gustafsson and the footwork of Gustafsson. He used his footwork very well to put himself in good positions, to use his reach very well. He used his jab, and he was able to kind of pick Jon Jones apart in a couple of rounds. And Jon Jones didn't expect that at all. He was really caught off guard by that first meeting. Alexander Gustafsson came into this rematch saying he's in the best shape of his life, trained the best. He was so prepared for this fight. And if that was the case, the way that Jon Jones was able to handle Gustafsson, skill for skill, is cause for concern in Gustafsson ever having another rematch against Jon Jones. The thing that Jon Jones said it at the presser after, he said, in a way, I Gustafsson. And that was the thing during the fight that when I was watching there in person, that was the biggest key to it. I could see Gustafsson was chasing Jon Jones around the ring. He wasn't cutting off the cage properly. If you're going to fight a guy like Jon Jones who is so dynamic, look what Jon Jones does. He opens the fight and he throws 2 takedowns. They were unsuccessful. But once you put that into someone's head, especially a striker like Gustafsson, you put the takedowns are going to be coming. You need to always fear that. Then it takes you a little bit off balance. You're not going to plant your feet properly for the proper amount of power in every shot, in every strike thrown, because you might be expecting the counter shot in return. Somebody, every time you throw a punch, might be trying to take you down afterward. He imprinted that early in Gustafsson's mind, early in the fight. Wasn't successful. He did get a takedown later on in his third attempt. Gustafsson was able to show some beautiful takedown defense and get up. But again, these aren't takedowns that take a lot of energy out of Jon Jones. It's not really deterring him from his goal. It's just planting the seed in Gustafsson's head. And it worked beautifully. It kept Gustafsson kind of playing the guessing game. He was switching stances constantly, and I thought that's one thing that Jon Jones did beautifully in this fight. He would get against the cage, he would move one way in orthodox, he would turn and switch stances and move the opposite direction in southpaw. If you've ever sparred with someone and is switching stances constantly, if you're not used to it, it makes you kind of need to compute what's happening. When you're setting up a strike on someone and then they switch stances, you have to then reorganize your strike because now things are coming from different angles, okay? He was constantly switching stances on Gustafsson. He was leading the dance. Although Jon Jones seemed to have backed up the majority of this fight, it was Gustafsson that was following him. So he could be backing up, but as long as he's laying the trail that Gustafsson is follow, he's doing a good thing. It's not necessarily who's forward, who's backwards. Gustafsson wasn't pressing him on the cage. He was following the person leading the dance, if that makes any sense. So Gustafsson wasn't his best fight, in my opinion. I didn't think that he cut off the ring. Everything wasn't there. He didn't really have that grit, that hunger that I wanted to see out of him. And it was partly because of Jon Jones' amazing ability to adapt, to use every piece of his striking and takedown and wrestling and fight IQ to his ability. Once he got Gustafsson to the ground, you could see Gustafsson's head was on the mat flush. And so once you land ground and pound on somebody's head and it's against the mat, there's nowhere for the head to go. So you're almost doubling up on the power. And 2 or 3 hard strikes on the head, and then Jon Jones kind of went to town with the beginning of the end for Gustafsson. Beautiful fight by Jon Jones. I don't think it was Gustafsson's best fight, but I think he's a star. I'm a big fan of Gustafsson. Curious to see what happens now in the future with Jon Jones. Obviously, he called out DC. He wants DC to come back to 205. I think DC has his best chance against Jon Jones at heavyweight. I think Jon Jones also realizes that because the weight differential will be a little bit greater at heavyweight for DC in comparison to what Jon Jones puts on. DC is undefeated at heavyweight. Let's not forget that. Beating a lot of good guys. He carries his speed over very well. Jones realizes that once he's to come back down to light heavyweight. We're going to have to wait and see. I really don't know what's going to play out. I'm glad that Jon Jones is back in the octagon. I'd like to see more consistent testing. I don't like all these little gray areas that are happening. I am happy that I got to watch the fight, but we want a clean sport.